Hello and welcome back to the second part of the note in which we're going to be discussing this book, Money, Blood and Revolution. In the first part, we, I think, established that economics is a science in crisis, not, many people will think, a particularly difficult proposition to assert. Today, we're going to be moving into the much more difficult terrain of how do we actually fix the problem? How do we cut the Gordian knot and come up with a version of economics that might actually work? With me now to answer these rather difficult questions is the author, George Cooper. George, thanks for joining me again. Now, the classic paradigm we're used to is provided for us by Adam Smith from Wealth of Nations onward. The classic critique of it comes from Karl Marx. You're going to basically suggest that we should be looking at a different approach which is modelled almost on the circulation of the blood, and which you have this fascinating diagram we'll show you here, of an economic pyramid. Take me through what your notion of the circulatory theory of the economy is.
Okay, well, coming back to what we talked about in the last one with Kuhn, he explained that the way you get out of these scientific crises is if you can resolve the two different camps and make their ideas fit together. So what we can do to get to this circulatory motion is, let's accept that Adam Smith is right and that the driver of economic progress is the pursuit of self-interest.
Which many of us do believe.
Which I think we all do believe in. But let's also accept that Karl Marx was right, that there is a process within capitalism that causes wealth polarization.
Yes.
Now the next step, I say, is let's also accept that Charles Darwin is right.
That we are competitors.
That we are competitors rather than maximizers.
So to make this clear, the neoclassical model assumes that we are all trying to maximize our wealth or our income or our utility. Your idea is that we are just trying to compete with the Joneses at any one time. We won't necessarily want to maximize.
We're not trying to maximize our wealth, we're trying to get richer than each other.
Right.
Which is a subtle difference. But what it means is that the, if you like, the natural human economic system degenerates into a feudal system, where those at the top of the pyramid, the social pyramid, here, their interests lie in keeping everything in the current status.
So both arrows on this model would point upwards to the top. The serfs pay everything up the line.
That's correct. In a feudal system, trade and rent would send money up to the top, and taxation would send money up to the top. And you would have a stagnant feudal system, which is what's prevailed through most of human history. Now, what happened in England, France and America, of course, was we had democratizing revolutions. And that, I think, changed the direction of flow of money from taxation, so that we had progressive taxation after those revolutions.
And empirically, we do therefore have evidence that what matters to economic results is that political structure, that democratic structure. That's what you're trying to accommodate within your model.
Absolutely. And what I'm trying to do with that model is to bring in what's called the institutional school of economics, which is a school of economics that I think is very important, which has been out of fashion for years now. The institutional school says actually the structure of your institutions in the economy are really important to creating economic growth. So this model recognizes you need the democratic institutions, the progressive taxation, which sends the money back down to the base of the pyramid, and then the Adam Smith's pursuit of self-interest, the capitalist process, sends it back up to the top of the pyramid, and you get this circulatory flow of wealth.
Right. Now, let's try looking, this is a very interesting further diagram you have. When it comes to policy dilemmas, a lot now rests on the proportionate role of government in the economy. This is very similar to the Laffer curve, which looked at how rates of tax compared to the amount of taxation you would take. How do we go about measuring this trade-off that we're looking at here between government's share of the economy and the economic growth? You think there is an optimal government share of the economy, as I understand it?
Yes. Well, what I'm saying here is, if we look at the empirical evidence, when we get an economy that's completely dominated by the state, say North Korea, or the former Soviet Republic, you get very low economic growth. When you get an economy with almost no government, like the failed state of Somalia, you also get no growth. But when we look around the world today, we see that the healthiest economies are the ones that tend to have quite large governments, but also a vibrant private sector as well. They reside in the middle of the curve. So what I'm saying with this diagram is that you need a balance between the private sector sending money up the social pyramid and the state sector sending it back down again. And the analogy I use in the book is to say that it would be useful if we could get to the point where we start to view the state and the private sector as something like the biceps and the triceps.
Right.
They're in opposition to each other. They're antagonistic muscles, that's the medical term. So each is hampering the operation of the other, but you need both of them to get the machine to work.
Okay, I have one final quick question for you. I hope it can be quick. We have a yearning for precision and for mathematics. That's one of the beauties of neoclassical economics and efficient markets, that it gives us very precise answers. Does your idea have any chance of being turned into a precise science, should it be?
I think you can go down the route of putting some maths around this idea, but I would give a strong warning on that. If we really are competitors rather than optimizers, then it's very likely that we're going to show behavior like herding behavior. And if we are herding, and I think we see that all around us, that is a much more difficult process to mathematically model. And so we've got to be very careful how far down the mathematical route we go.
Okay, George, we've only really scratched the surface of your book, but thank you very much indeed. To conclude, as I always get the final word on these occasions, this is a very, very interesting idea. I suspect it will be argued about very much. Has he really cut the Gordian knot? Do we have with us here the Harvey or the Copernicus of economics? Time will tell.